Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. We have a return guest today, our friend C.LEE'S Cawley. Now, C.LEE'S is a professional organizer, and there's a previous podcast, so you can go and catch up on it, and it was about 7 careers and 7 life lessons. So that will have probably been already broadcast by the time this one is going to be put up on Podbeam. So hello, C.LEE'S, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me back, Denise. What a thrill. I love you. I love it. Your community is so welcoming.
Let me tell you something. This is just my feeling, C.LEE'S, and this is from my whole life. When I was in catering, we made good food. I made good food. I was proud of my food, but most of the time, and it didn't matter if the client was a $20 wedding, do you know what I mean? Or a $200,000 studio party. What people always said to me, what clients said to me at the end of the event was, food was great, love the decor, blah, blah, blah. But you have the nicest staff. You had the nicest people working here, Denise. Well, C.LEE'S, they'd say you must have extensive training in HR. And I would say to them, I hire nice people.
Yep.
And I feel like that. And I choose nice friends. Seriously, if somebody's a stinker, they don't last long. I'm a firm believer in just trying to be nice.
Yeah, no, well, I think that's true. You attract what you put out.
Yeah.
And obviously and I feel that that's the same thing for me. So, we were talking the last time about my students, and I absolutely love my students. They are people that you and I both understand. They're women beyond a certain age. And I think that I always have at least one man who will join we always have the wonderful token gentleman, but for the most part, we are women who care about each other, who are invested in each other's success. And it really makes a world of difference. Absolutely.
Otherwise, you know what? What's the point, C.LEE'S?
Yeah.
I know sometimes you have to do jobs. We've all done jobs we don't like for money. Okay.
Right.
I'm not discounting money. But I know this, at this stage of the game for me, I don't know how many years I have left. And luckily, we put some money away. So I don't have to be with people that are stinkers any longer.
Right.
That's all it comes down to.
And
so I'm with you. Life's too short.
Life's too short. And that's why I'm absolutely with you. I'm choosing to do this, right?
Yes.
I don't have to do this. I am choosing to do this. And people are like, so what is this? So I'm teaching, I teach an online course called the Paper Cleanse. I'm a certified professional organizer. So I have a few other things that I offer: a seminar on easy and actionable organizing tips, and an ebook on closet organization. But my focus is the Paper Cleanse, which is really, it's a step-by-step system to kind of get rid of the chaos, get the clarity around your paper, those pesky piles and frustrating files. And if you follow my method, you will get a lifetime of paper organization. But I always have to add this caveat: without scanning anything. My student is a woman of a certain age who is not digitally savvy, right? It's so interesting. I have a 24-year-old daughter. She doesn't even own a printer her entire life. She's a director of education in England, and everything she does, she works remotely. Everything is on her computer.
I know.
And I'm sorry, but I have my paper and my pen in my hand right now. I need my paper. And my people are paper people. We love our paper.
I have to have the paper. And I said this in the last podcast, but it's worth saying. Cindy would come back from a shoot. So in the papers are what our job was, the deal. All of it, by the way, was on my computer or in my email. Or the shopping list. Really just paper, maybe a non-disclosure.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you something. I bought those big, pretty, expensive, colorful paper clips, and I would put them on the papers for the job. Not only did I want the papers back, but I wanted the paper clip back. But I'll tell you something. I needed those papers. I needed those papers so if a problem came up, I know it was on my computer. I needed to feel the papers. I needed the papers to bill.
Well,
I needed the papers to close out that particular job. So I'm very attached to it. And like you just said about your daughter, my husband's a lawyer also. I know you mentioned that last time we talked. But my husband he's been a computer since the minute he could.
Right.
Okay, the minute his law library, everything was on his computer.
Wow.
I mean, he had secretaries and an office manager and a couple of attorneys that went to, went depots and stuff like that, just to perform. But it was all on his computer. So when he says to me sometimes, well, I need a copy of your itinerary, I print out like the copy of my itinerary and I put it in, because what's this? I said, you asked for the itinerary. He goes, oh, I thought you'd just email it to me. So everybody's different, but I know a lot of people in my age group still want paper.
Yes. And these are the people I am working with because I understand that. And I think your example was a really good one. It was easier for you to refer to the paper than to go find it on your computer because we're digital dinosaurs, right? This is not how we started. We started with paper. Computers, I didn't get a computer till like 20 years ago. Gotcha. So, it's just, and now we have these miniature computers in our hands. And I know you said that when you went to Europe recently, you didn't take paper. And I was like, hats off to you, girl. Because when I went to Europe, I had a file of, London, Berlin, Prague, Vienna. I had a file for each place because
I may have stretched the truth a tiny bit. I did have a tiny bit of paper with me.
Okay, yeah.
But I had saved in my notes. I had saved a few things that I wanted to have. But you're right. I was amazed. I did have, by the way, and I'm the same, C.LEE, when I'm up at the window at United, and I have my, emailed ticket to me from United, but then sometimes, and they're young and I love them, they go, would you still like a paper ticket? I see, they know I'm old. I go, I'd love one. So I can stick it in my back pocket and have it when I get up to the counter.
Yeah. Or it becomes memorabilia. So in my paper cleanse, I teach a very simple method. I call it the karma of paper management, KARMA. K stands for the crud. I know it's misspelled, but I had to do it for my acronym. A is for action, R is for reference, M is for memorabilia, and then the final A is for archive. And I think that so sometimes those tickets, those boarding passes become part of our memorabilia, right? What day did I travel? How much did I spend? That's why I'm bemoaning the fact that there's no longer ticket stubs. I have tickets for all of the concerts I went to as a teenager in my 20s, but now it's all digital, or it's you print out, a huge sheet of paper. I love the old-fashioned ticket stub, right?
And they were usually beautiful.
Yes.
Here's the other, one of the things that I've gone through them, but it's because from my career, there are things I haven't say this. I haven't put pen to paper about them yet, so I can't throw them out because they're triggers to me.
Sure.
They're positive triggers.
Yeah.
And I know, and C.LEE, because I moved so fast when I was doing that, once in a while when I open one of these chests, it's like having your baby pictures up, but I read the award.
Yes.
Or I read the commendation, or I read a letter from someone who incredibly fancy that sent me a thank you note.
Yeah.
And when I read them, I think, wow, because do you know what? Half the time I barely had time to do that. So you're right about memorabilia. There's stuff. It's like, I don't want to throw out every single letter that I've gotten from people that I loved, but I also, by scanning it, that's not feeling the piece of paper. I want to feel the piece of paper.
Yes, it's coming across like the handwriting from your parents, right? Yes. Both of my parents have passed. And so The memorabilia is so powerful, and that's kind of one of the things that sets my process apart, is that I recognize memorabilia as its own category. And I
Good.
think it's one of the most important category because it speaks to our heart, right? It doesn't speak to our head. It speaks to what we're about, our lifetime of memories, the people that matter to us. So
Exactly.
yeah, so I think it's a powerful category, and it's usually for my students after they get through the other stuff, the memorabilia is almost the reward at the end when you
How
can
wonderful.
yeah, it really is. And people have come across such amazing things. In fact, I'll share this with you.
Please.
In my so my students, we actually also have a membership, and in the membership I do a monthly challenge. And last month it was the ooh challenge, organizing other office objects. And we actually had a bingo card, and I was aiming for full bingo. And so one of the categories on the card was business cards, and I had 18 inches of business cards in a shoebox. And so I gathered them all up. I went through them in less than an hour. I ended up with 2 quarter-inch stacks. One was things like the guy that power washes our fence and things. He doesn't have a website. He gave me his business card. That's the way I'll find him. And then I
Yes.
had about 1/4 inch of really memorabilia. They were my friends' cards that people had given me from different, businesses they had. And one of the cards I found was Ariana Huffington's card from 2004. I sat next to her at a dinner party that my husband and I were invited to. And she's like, she had an AOL address at the time. And she gave me her card. And now I wish I'd really kept up with Ariana. We
I
really
know.
hit it off. But that's what I found, and how wonderful it was. And then all of that, the memory of that meal and that evening, and we were all dressed up and people were laughing. And yeah, that one piece of paper was so powerful. So it's
I get
meaningful.
it's like finding a fabulous photograph, or what I get a lot. People send me a photograph, like they'll say, Denise, I was going through my stuff, and this is a picture. Remember when you spoke at our group in Seattle or whatever? And I look at that picture and I think, God, my hair looked good that day. Or I think that was an expensive jacket. Or
Right,
I got that jacket on sale. Or I think, oh, I remember what it felt like to buy that jacket.
right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I can tell where I was in my career by my jewelry,
Mm,
by and
yes,
and I think, oh God, I was so happy. I was so proud of myself that I bought that for myself. Do you know what I
right,
mean? So
right.
it it's not the stuff, it's the feeling that it evokes in you. Do
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh. Say it again. It's not
It,
the stuff, it's the feeling it evokes in you. That really sums so much of it up. So much of the last 20 years of organizing people. And I think, and we talked about this, it's that when you are on the latter edge of your life, right?
the runway is getting shorter,
There
see.
you go.
Okay.
Right. You really start prioritizing what's
Yeah.
important to you. And it's always people, not possessions, right?
Yeah.
It's, spending time. So that's one of the things, people are like, oh, are you passionate about paper? I'm like, no. I would, when I was an organizer in people's homes, I much prefer a kitchen or a pantry than paper because you can get a much quicker transformation. If you're
Yes.
doing paper, it takes a long time. I'm not passionate about paper. I'm passionate about the transformation my wonderful women students make in their lives because they've organized the paper, right? They are free. I had a student retire early because she actually finally dealt with all of the financial paper. And when she finally looked at it all, she couldn't go to a financial advisor until she captured the information. But when she
Yeah.
finally opened all the mail, looked at the numbers, recorded them, took that to the financial advisor, he was like, yeah, you could probably retire now. I mean, how powerful is that, right?
That is such a huge piece that
Yes.
you should say that. I have friends and I have one friend in particular that acquired a lot of stuff. Now that stuff is still worth a lot of money.
Right.
And I keep saying, sell that stuff. Because it's like when anything, it's like I used to I bought several pieces of jewelry for myself when I was working full time. Here I am in kitchen pants and a dirty t-shirt. It was not to show off. It was for me to look down and look at that diamond bracelet and thought, I did that all by myself. Okay. Yep. I did that all by myself. It didn't come from anybody. It wasn't, so it used to be, I used to think it was like a battle ribbon almost. I was,
great. Yes.
Well, my friend that I've decided since then is really actually a hoarder, but I do know that there is probably $250,000, $300,000. Everybody thinks their stuff is worth something. You know how when you go to someone's house and they need to clean up the living room,
right?
And they go, oh no, that was a very expensive table. I said, sure, in 1950, but you can buy that table for $25 at the Goodwill this week.
Right.
So if you're lucky, you get $25.
Yeah.
But actually, this person has a lot of valuable stuff and not let go of it. So and it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's a paper cleanse. I mean, the emotions behind hanging on to stuff that no longer serves you.
Yes, it's so true. And so it's interesting that you should say that, because one of the things we talk about in the paper cleanse is finding the prizes in the piles. And I can't tell you, like, this woman found all of her information, was able to retire early, but I have people find cash in cards that they never opened. I have, people find gift certificates, all kinds of things that people find, important documents that they thought were lost.
Yes.
But when they're finally sorting through it, lo and behold, there's their grandfather's birth certificate, right? Like, it's crazy. So it's so powerful. The result of coming to terms with it, so I always say, so many of my students, they've spent their lifetimes taking care of their children, their spouses, their grandchildren, their volunteer jobs, their careers, their businesses. Like, now you can take care of yourself, right? And it's, it's amazing what kind of transpires. Once they get all of the paper organized, they're taking control of the paper. The paper's not controlling them. All of a sudden, now they've got free time. They can read a book. They can try a new recipe. They found that recipe they wanted to try. They can, I had a student start a nonprofit. It was her passion project, but until she could get her head around the paper, she felt guilty, right? So and then people start losing weight because they're able to eat healthier, right? It's crazy, the transformation that people discover when they finally do make the decision that they are worth it, that their time has come, and that they're going to take the time in a group. We try to have fun. Paper is not fun. I get it, right? So that's why we challenge each other. We do co-working. I have subject matter experts come. Matt Paxton of PBS's Legacy List was my recent subject matter expert. Came, did a recording, a masterclass for my students. So it's we try to make it as fun as we can. And it's also, I have a system, right? It's A, B, C, D, E. If you follow the system, you will be successful. I mean, I've never refunded anybody yet. Because if they do it, it works. Because I've done the same system with my actual in-house students when I used to go to clients for nearly 20 years. So I know that it works, and so that's how I can feel really confident. And finding time management is part of it. So we talk about that. It is it's an interesting thing. But I'll tell you that one of the simplest things people can do, they say, I just don't know what to do. I'm like, do you have a comfortable chair, right? Pandemic happened, and all of a sudden people just had to make do. They were at the dining room table with an uncomfortable dining room chair. like, do you have a good light, especially for our older eyes, right? We need
Yes.
some really good light to see what we're doing. And then they realize, oh, that's why they don't want to sit at their desk, because they shoved it in a corner in the basement. Who wants to be in a dark, cold basement? No, I'm like, work at your kitchen table. If that's where you're productive, you don't have to leave it a mess. Have a little caddy so you can tuck things away. I mean, there are so many ways to address why you're not dealing with a paper.
Yes.
So yes, so those are a couple of tips to help
Oh,
people.
I think it's just, and I do think, and this is just me, we all get sometimes into bad behavior. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
We don't see our way out of it, which is why I think you as a coach and as a mentor, but I mean, sometimes I need someone else to look at me and say, you know what might be a suggestion for you? And they say it, and they say it in the nicest way possible. And because I'm actually one of those people, the minute some most of the time when people suggest something to me, I say no. My first response is no, no, no,
Right.
no. But I'm like a dog. Tone is everything with me. But sometimes, it's like if someone says, all I can think about, and this was my family, we recently sold it, but we've owned an apartment building for 100 years in San Francisco.
Wow.
Okay. 12 units. My aunt lives in one. My sister lives in the other one now. I lived there when I went to the Culinary Academy. My friends had called it the Vivaldo YMCA. But here was an example. A young woman has been living there for 30 years, okay, which is not unusual in San Francisco. Do you know what I mean? And there's rent control, and she's lovely, wonderful tenant, except here was the example, C.LEE, and I wish I'd had pictures of it because I would send it to you. But the bottom line was there was a leak in her apartment. She was gone. So my aunt discovered, my sister discovered the leak, and they went into the apartment. She had her mail for like 30 years just sitting in these boxes. She never opened it. I don't mean important mail.
Right.
I mean like flyers and the 39-cent grapes at the market. She just never, but she took enough that when she didn't throw it away, she actually got a box or two and would slide the mail into the box. So my sister sent me the pictures of it, and I said, okay, she must make collages or art.
Right. There must be a reason.
There's got to be a reason somebody keeps the mail. And my sister said, I don't think so. So now, of course, the problem was it was waterlogged.
Right. Oh
so
my gosh.
to reach her on a vacation and say, we have to, we don't think it will mail out. It's mildewing. It's going to ruin the floor. We're going to have to throw some of the mail out. And then she said, can you just keep it in the garage until I get home? In the wet soaked boxes.
Oh no.
And my family did, of course, you have to, the tenant asked you to. So they made some room in the garage. To make long story short, when she saw it, she said, oh yes, I've never really dealt with my mail. Just like, and my sister said, can I ask you why? Why?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I always meant to go through it, and then I didn't. And then sometimes I thought there might be something important. Then I was afraid to throw it out. And then the pile just got so big.
Wow.
So when you're talking about what you were just talking about, it's the same. Talk about, of course, she couldn't do anything else because her energy was all tied up in this mail.
And it's so fascinating. I mean, in her defense, we each get 300 pieces of junk mail a year on average. 100 million trees are cut down annually to create junk mail. So it is a problem. And this is one of the bonuses I offer is a little course, a mini course on how to get rid of the junk mail, because it is a problem. But
it's a problem.
But it's so interesting because one of the things I tell my students, because they're, when they come to me, they probably have a lot of paper. I'm like, we're not going to worry about the backlog because that has timed out. What's important is the stuff that's coming in now, right? The stuff on your desk now is where we need to focus our energy. And I don't know if you've heard about Doom boxes, DOOM. It stands
No.
for didn't organize, only moved, right? And people have we literally Doom boxes that go from home to home. Now she lived in the same home, but and they just don't deal with them. I had a client that she went from one job to another, packed up a box. And so I always date the box. That's a great tip for your
Oh,
listeners. If you're
yes.
going to put it in a box, date the box. And we found a box that said, it said Denise to sort, right?
Yeah.
And it was dated February 2017. So that was 6 years ago. And I challenged her and I said, can you just sort through it? Oh my gosh. I'm like, I know, but knowing that it weighs on the back of your mind, right?
Yes, it
So I
does.
said to her, get your timer out from your phone and time yourself. How long do you think it's going to take you? I always say this because people either think it's not going to take any time at all and it takes 4 times as long, or they think it's going to take forever and it takes no time at all. She's like, oh my God, it's going to take me hours. I'm like, okay, I'll call that 3 hours now. And so I said, set aside, go pee, get a cup of coffee, set aside 3 hours to do it, right? Set your
Yeah.
timer, report back to me. So there was some accountability there, right? Oh, yeah, about 45 minutes later, the phone rings. I pick up. She's like, C.LEE'S. I'm like, are you done? She's like, yes. She said there was nothing in there that was important. Nothing. It was from a job 6 years ago. She's not even in that field anymore. She said, I found a couple of friends, birthday cards that they had sent me, given me, and that made me happy. I'm like, that's great. That's memorabilia if you want to keep it. She said, the rest of it, I threw it. She said, the rubber bands were crunchy. It was so old. And I just thought, what a great example. She moved that 3 times and it took her less than 45 minutes to deal with it when she finally sat down to do it. She's like, now I've got 2 hours left. I'm like, take yourself out to lunch, go have a walk, call a friend. You earned that time.
That's one of the best examples of just dealing with something, putting the accountability on it and doing it. And then the great sense of success she must have. Really, that's huge. That's
Yes.
climbing the mountain.
It really is. It's climbing the mountain. So that's the kind of success I love to see and hear about. And I'm lucky because people are getting that success all the time. The other thing I always tell my students is good and done is better than perfect and none, right? Progress, not perfection. And I bet you can relate to this. So many of my students are creative, intelligent women. They've always been at the top of their field. I don't have a master's. Almost all of my students have masters. Half of them have doctorates. They have built empires. They've raised families. They were the A+ students, the valedictorians, right? And so when it comes to the paper, they wanted it perfect. And if it couldn't be perfect, they couldn't do it. And maybe that's what, where that junk mail pile came from. And so I'm like, good and done is better than perfect and none. All I want is a B. You don't need an A+. You don't need to be an A+ student. You can be a B student. Look, because
that's so well said. That is, I thought I was a perfectionist. Running big kitchens beat me out of it. That just beat me. I had to become humble. I was beaten. I found God. When you run a kitchen with 30 people working in it every day, who are from different cultures and speak a different language and are all men, trust me, my perfectionism was beat out of me.
Right.
But when Cindy came to work for me, Cindy is a perfectionist, though I know she certainly worked on it and she's not here she can jump in at any time if she wants to. But the reason I say that is Cindy everything she does is to be an A+. Right. It doesn't matter if she was typing a document or doing a plate or and sometimes, C.LEE'S, I would have to pull it out of her hands and say, this is good enough.
Good enough, good and done. Yes.
Good and done. I love that. Good and done. Not what did you say? Good and
Good and
done.
done is better than perfect and none.
Okay.
Because if you're aiming for perfection, you'll probably never get there, or you're going to make yourself sick doing it, right?
That's right.
Like we have to prioritize what's important. And in this age and stage of my life, it's people and making memories that are my priorities,
Yes.
not writing a perfect email, you
That's
know?
right.
Yeah. So,
So well. And I want you to say it one more time, just because I love it. Doom boxes.
Doom box, yes, it stands for didn't organize, only moved.
Okay.
And
See,
that's kind of the backlog. And quite honestly, it's almost, but that's the beauty of dating it, right? So if you
yes.
see a box from anything that has a year that has a one in front of it, then it's probably got memorabilia in it, right? Because paper goes through phases, right? Like
Yes.
a great example. I had this conversation with my daughter. We're talking about rent. She lives in London. She's like, "How much did you pay for rent for your first apartment?" I knew exactly, but I didn't remember the rent I paid for like the next place, the place after that. You know how you remember your
Yeah.
first paycheck, your first
Yeah.
job, um, and your first rent. But I have the pay stub from my first, when I worked at Driving Miss Daisy, my first time there. And that at the time, I saved it because of W-2. Somehow I never threw it out because it became memorabilia, right?
Of
It's like,
course.
how did I live in New York City for $300? Like we know we went to like openings of the galas and things and would get free hors d'oeuvres made by beautiful people like you. So
Now I have to tell you, I look back and someone else was saying this, but when I got to be the executive chef, not only were they paying me, but we got to I was on these big parties.
mhm.
If I was out on a location, I always gave every waiter a bottle of the wine. Do you know what I
Oh
mean? Or
yeah, absolutely.
the party hostesses, we had these, so these were the super rich. These people did not take the flower arrangements. So
Right.
thousands of dollars, in flowers. And I would always just say to all the girls that were working it, I'd say, take the one we were always organized. I'd say, bring in those arrangements. We're breaking them down right here.
Beautiful. I
And
love
I get
that.
all the white orchids. And I remember though, before my salary had gone up, I could get home from a party. I'd had nothing but I'd eaten delicious food. People had thanked me. I had a great bottle of wine and I had a bouquet of white orchids in my cruddy little apartment in Venice Boulevard. And you know what? I was rich.
Life
Celia.
was great.
I was rich.
Absolutely. I love
So,
that.
I really was. I look back now and I think I'm not sure. I have felt it, but I thought I'm not sure I ever felt more rich than that in my life by just from the
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
fun. It was a very
Absolutely.
fun time. And
Yeah.
like my daughter getting her first apartment. It
Yeah,
was
it's a lot. It is a lot of fun. So anyway, so yeah, I'm thinking that, your audience might benefit. I have a little ebook called The 12 Types of Papers to Toss Today. I call it the Dirty Dozen, right? And this is a great starting place. Junk mail is on the list. So,
yes.
so if your listeners want to get that, they can go to my website, which is C.LEE Cawley. It's spelled CLEECAWLEY.com/toss, TOS. So tossing those papers is a great way to start. And I find that so many times people just want permission, right?
Yes.
One of the things I tell people is in this day and age, how are you going to find that information? Are you going to go online or are you going to go into your filing cabinet? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've tossed all of my manuals. I
I,
just, if you need to figure out how to change the battery on your smoke alarm, I'd much rather go to YouTube and have some hunky guy tell me how to do it than, try to find that piece of paper filed away someplace. I just save the big appliance, the front cover, which
yes.
tells me
The
the
model.
style, the model number. I staple my receipt to it. If I have a physical receipt, I'll print it off online so I know how much that refrigerator cost me. But that's all I keep because otherwise I'm going to call a professional to repair it, or I'm going to go online to figure out how to change the filter. So,
That's such a good tip. Cindy taught me that. Like
yes,
I would say to Cindy, "Oh, I wish I still had a copy of that, but I'm sure." And about 30 seconds later, she'd say, "That's online." Or
yeah,
whatever I was looking for, she'd say, "Oh, that's online." It is, and I'm not sure that everybody, because I'm not a YouTube person much, but I have
right.
search for things.
Yeah.
So that is such a good tip. Thank you, Celia. Well, I hope that people go to your website, and if they want to talk, think about your course, they should go to the papercleanse.com,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah, they
before I
can do
walk,
that. Yep. And get on the wait list. And then they'll be in the loop to learn more. I do a free masterclass called The Secret to uh, Processing Your Paper Clutter for Good. So I teach a lot of these concepts. Occasionally, I'll do that. So I'd love for your listeners to get into my world. And if paper's a problem, I'd love to help be the solution.
thank you so much. And you know what else, Celia? I think a lot of us at this age now, not only if we've had problems, our own problems, paper, if our parents, if we're
Ah,
downsizing our parents or downsizing ourselves, but I have
yes,
a lot of friends that are downsizing their parents or
yes,
the estate of their parents. And having done that, all I say to them is 3 piles, the donations, family and friends. And if there's anything that you think you can sell, if you can bring yourself to do it, do it. Even if you don't want the money, donate the money, give the money to your
yes,
grandson that's who's
yes,
broke and going to college, or your granddaughter.
yes.
But it's that was an experience having to break down my, so I had my own clutter, but then I wasn't at this stage yet, so I brought home my mother's clutter.
Right.
And but I got rid of it, but I used a lot of it, and I've kept just the pieces that I absolutely loved.
I
It's
love to hear you say that. We call that creating a legacy list, and this comes from
yeah.
Matt Paxson. And it's not only having the things, but knowing the stories behind them. And it is something. So, my community, once you do the paper cleanse, you can only be in my membership if you've done the course, but we call it the Paper Cleanse Club Plus because we talk about not just paper, but we talk about the things. We talk about the clothing, the jewelry, the china, the silver, the all of this stuff. Because what you said is so true. We are in, people are dying or downsizing. We're getting their stuff. We have our own stuff. We're trying to downsize to, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a
So,
lot.
yeah.
Thank you so much again for your time. And you're just a delight. And there's so much information on C.LEE'S websites, and Cindy will give you that information when we broadcast again. So, C.LEE, thank you. And I hope you'll come back in the future.
I promise I will, Denise. I love your podcast and I love your community.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Cindy. If you have any questions, it's womenbeyond@icloud.com. When we go to broadcast the podcast, if you go to our Facebook page, Women Beyond a Certain Age, and all of it, really, the Facebook page tells you who's coming, who's going, who's been here, and how to reach them. So that's the idea of sharing the information. This was so valuable. Thanks, C.LEE.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Cindy, for everything you do. Okay, thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.